There are 10 games left in the MLB season, and can the Diamondbacks make it to the postseason? They're hot and they're cold, so let's talk about all of it. It's another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here! It's Southwest Bias!
And of course, I'm talking Diamondbacks. I have to get the entire PHNX Diamondbacks crew. Of course, it's Derek Montilla on my right, the MLB's man of mystery, Jesse Friedman to my left, and of course Damon Dog, the people's producer, Mr. Hold the Line, making all the magic happen behind the Mac. Gentlemen, I'll start with you, Jesse, since you just got back from a trip out to Colorado. The Diamondbacks, they weren't looking too great, and then they finally had what seemed like a complete performance-ish last night against the Rockies.
Yeah, it was a good game for them. It was an even better game for Eduardo Rodriguez. I think just really, really big for him to come out and not just pitch well in a big game for the D-backs, but really look dominant. It was far and away, in my mind, the best outing that we've seen from Rodriguez since he came over to the D-backs. 11 strikeouts, 6 1/3 innings. He hadn't completed 6 innings even at that point. So a huge day for him. And I think it not only was big for that day, but also big for what it could mean moving forward as the Diamondbacks have, as you said, those 10 games left. And then, potentially in the postseason as well. It's still not super clear what this rotation would look like if the D-backs were to get there. And I think Eduardo Rodriguez made a pretty strong case for himself yesterday.
It wasn't just his best performance as a Diamondback. It was his best performance in, 5 years? I mean, the last time that he struck out 11 or more was in 2019 when he was a member of the
in terms
Boston
of
Red
strikeouts.
Sox.
Yeah.
So, it was a great day for him and just very encouraging as far as, the addition the Diamondbacks made by investing in him for the next few years.
Right, and as you see in baseball, right, like all you need is one good game, and that might set you up to be on a roll for your next couple of starts. But to take a wider scale perspective on the Diamondbacks, Derek, obviously, like right now they are tied with the Mets for the second and third wild card spot, 2 games ahead of the Braves in the National League. From a numbers perspective, how important was this win? And then the follow-up on that is also from a morale perspective. How important was this win?
It was huge. It was huge to build on the offense because the offense really struggled in the first 2 games of this series. So again, it's just reassuring the team that they can score and that they still are one of the best offenses in all of Major League Baseball. But they have a tough test ahead. They have a Brewers team that they have 4 games against. And I think it was just, that team took 2 out of 3 of them the last time they played them, which was just this last series before the Rockies. I think it's encouraging that they can go on and continue to do this in Milwaukee and perhaps, kind of overcome the fact that they did lose pretty handedly to the Brewers.
Is it make or break, Jesse, this series against the Brewers now, right? You have a punctuation mark on the end of this Rocky series. I'm not going to call it an exclamation point because the series itself wasn't fantastic.
No.
But you stopped it in a good way, and now you have 10 games left. You're tied with the Mets. You're 2 above the Braves, and you're taking on a good team. Is this make or break for the Diamondback season, this series right here?
I don't think so. Not necessarily. Is it very important? Yes, certainly. Every single game is. But we're not at the point where the Diamondbacks mathematically, have to win every single game, or, the Brewers are not a team they're really in direct contention with right now. The Brewers have already clinched the Central Division. That just happened recently. But they still have, more to fight for. They're trying to get one of those bye spots. So I don't think you're going to see the Brewers roll over or anything either. But yeah, it's just like how the Diamondbacks lost 2 out of 3 to the Colorado Rockies. And while that was certainly not a great outcome for them, it also did not spell the end of their season. Right. And in a similar way, the D-backs, yes, it would be great for them if they could go out and take 3 out of 4 from the Brewers, but it's going to depend on not only their performance, but the performance of the Braves and the Mets. And there is a world where the D-backs don't play that well this weekend and they actually wind up still being okay. But of course, yes, you would like for them to maybe kind of control their own destiny and try to not rely so much on other teams not doing well.
So let's pose the question to the room. We'll start with you, Derek, then we'll go to Damon. Do you agree? Is this not make or break for the Diamondbacks this series against the Brewers?
I completely agree. I think it's just a matter of the fact that the Diamondbacks they're not chasing one of the wild card spots.
Right.
They are in a wild card spot. Plus, we've talked about it a bit on the show, but the Mets and the Braves both have a difficult schedule ahead of them. Their schedule is not necessarily easy for the next 10 games. They also play each other. So there's that.
Yes.
The Mets are incredibly hot right now. So if the Mets go in and sweep the Braves, I mean, that pretty much ends their season.
Make it really hard for the Braves.
And I mean, I think the Mets have a lot of reason. Not only are they a division rival, but I mean, the Mets have kind of a chip on their shoulder about, this season and about the guys that are there, right? Like this is a Mets team that was seen as lesser than previous Mets teams. And this team has been incredible ever since Grimace went out there and threw the first pitch. He has his own seat in the stadium now. So, I mean, they're like Jesse said, there's an outcome where the Diamondbacks still, even throughout this 10-game stretch, maybe don't win 6 out of 4. Maybe they go 4-6 over this next 10, but still can be fine and still make the playoffs.
Damon, disaster if the Diamondbacks don't have at least a winning record against the Brewers in this series?
I would say they can't get swept. That's my main thing, because I'm looking here at the Braves schedule. They got the Marlins. I think there's a decent chance the Braves win all 3 of those games. If the Diamondbacks somehow lost all 4 and the Braves won all 3, that would spell disaster. But overall, tough schedules for both the Mets and the Braves coming up. Yeah. And that series against each other is massive for the Diamondbacks.
It is. And the Mets have 4 against the Phillies, too, which is, again, another team that might not have a lot to play for, but considering how close those teams at the top, right? They still want one of those bye spots. So, like, at this point, they couldn't just go in and get swept by the Mets in 4 games and expect to still have one of those top spots.
But the Braves play the Royals as well, who are only 1.5 up in the AL wild card.
Yeah, so they're fighting as well. Like, that's a sneaky good Royals team that, of course, you don't want to be playing late. Neither do the Diamondbacks. Don't want to be playing the Padres late here, but that's what's on their schedule.
What I think is so interesting about the Diamondbacks just in general, and it wasn't just this season, but it was a lot of last season as well, is just like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And then the offense deals, and then the starting pitching struggles, and the starting pitching gets on track, and then it's the bullpen that comes out and struggles, and then it's injuries, and it's so up and so down, so up and so down. It's hard not to feel like, at least from a fan perspective, you're living and you're dying with each series at this point, right? Because while it might not be disaster strikes if you don't have a winning record against the Brewers in the series, right? You're still definitely in the wild card race. It depends a lot about the teams around you. But from a morale standpoint, from a momentum standpoint, this is a team that seems like when they trip, they fall and they stay down for a little bit. But then when they get a good sprint going, they're running and they're taking off. And Damon, I'm going to bounce it back to you. What is it about the Diamondbacks that when it's working right at this moment in the season that keeps them alive in this race despite the lowest of lows?
Well, I think they have a really deep starting lineup. I mean, I don't know that they have the top end talent that maybe some of these really, really good teams in baseball have, but they have, 7-8 guys that can hit 15 to 20 plus home runs. So I think the consistency top to bottom in their lineup, and as well as like when it's really working, the front line starting pitching is great. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't always been super consistent this season. But when things are clicking for the Diamondbacks, it's because their roster from top to bottom is probably one of the best overall rosters in baseball.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I think last season couldn't have been more different than this season, right?
Okay.
The Diamondbacks last year, honestly, they got off to a hot start.
Mm-hmm.
They really had one of the worst Julys in like MLB history.
It was bad.
And you thought that, and I mean, that's proven. That's not even a joke. That's literally like they've literally had one of the biggest drops from being above 500 to below in MLB history. But
it was so over.
But and again,
like, and then they were so back.
Right.
So back.
Well, and again, like last year, you didn't expect as much as you expect from this team this year. So the expectations or the standards have changed dramatically. Last year, you were like, well, we thought maybe they had a chance, to make the postseason. Looks like it's not going to happen. But hey, they had a nice season, and then they made it in, and then we all know what happened from that point. This year, it was like, yes, we got to the World Series. We're better. We have to win it. That's the only logical conclusion here. And instead, this season has just been filled with injuries, which last season was not. They had a terrible start, which is the opposite from last year. And, I think the only similarities are here we are coming into the final week, and the Diamondbacks are kind of limping in a little bit. And they also still kind of need some help from other teams losing a bit in order for them to secure their playoff spot at this point.
I think a similarity, even though it's different expectations and they did it differently, is that there was no consistency.
Yeah,
right? Like the same thing. They started hot and then they dropped off. It was just flipped. This year, right?
Yeah, it's hard for them to keep it going throughout the season and just kind of have a normal normal season like that.
Jesse, I saw you doing what Jesse does, and I saw you pulling up all the numbers when I was asking Damon that question before. Was there something specifically you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, Damon touched on just how well-rounded the Diamondbacks lineup is, and that's so true. I mean, you look up and down this roster, and it's not just your guys who are starting every day. It's a lot of the bench players too. Yeah. I mean, Pavin Smith has a 958 OPS. Pavin Smith has the highest OPS on the team right now. And obviously doesn't have quite as many plate appearances as some of the other guys. But yeah, I mean, it's him having a 958 OPS. It's Randall Grichuk, who's been on an absolute tear lately, having an 871 OPS. He and Jock Peterson have combined to form basically the best designated hitter situation in baseball outside of the Braves with Marcell Ozuna and the Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani. The Diamondbacks are next.
Shohei.
Some guy who has a dog. I don't know much else about him, but
sorry. Go ahead.
I thought decoy is what his translator was.
Oh no, that's scapegoat.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, it is really an exceptional lineup. But at the same time, I think what we saw in Colorado is that the Diamondbacks can't rely on that lineup every single day, right? There are, even for the best lineup in all of baseball, which is what the Diamondbacks have had this year, you're still going to have bizarre days from time to time where you score 2 runs on in back-to-back games at Coors Field against one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball. That's going to happen, and that's where you need your starting pitching to step up. You need your bullpen to step up, and that's really what I'm going to be watching here in these last 10 games.
Well, I think when you talk about the starting pitching, until Eduardo Rodriguez shoved against the Rockies, it was a pretty big concern of what the heck happened to the starting pitching, Derek.
Yeah, especially as far as length goes. Like, even in some good outings, Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly, these guys aren't giving you the innings that they have been giving you previously. And again, Eduardo Rodriguez had one of the longest outings. In fact, it was his longest outing since his last outing with the Tigers from 2023, this last one. So, I think that's really what's been missing. And, of course, that just puts an unnecessary amount of stress on the bullpen, and Torey having to use high leverage guys in certain situations when they're up, and then he has the way of managing it differently when they're down. But I mean, it's caused the bullpen arms to basically pitch a lot of innings, and I mean, it's just not ideal right now, especially when every game is so important. So then you're using guys like AJ Puck and Kevin Ginkel far too often due to necessity.
Yeah. Well, we are going to get into what I'm going to say confidence level as far as how you guys are feeling when it comes to not only the starting pitching, not only the lineup, but getting in the playoffs and making a deep run. But of course, I got to remind people that Southwest Bias is coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Some terms and conditions apply at participating locations. This is at circlek.com for details. And of course, I have to tell everybody about our friends over at Empire today, because you don't want to rush when you're picking new floorings, but you do want it to be easy, quick, and convenient. And Empire has all the tools necessary for you to get that and get it done at the right price. But notice I said right price, not the cheapest price, because if they came out there and said, hey, we'll give you the cheapest flooring humanly possible, we'll guarantee the lowest price no matter what, you're getting bad flooring. That point blank period. And you just don't want to make that decision. This is something that's worth investing in, and the people at Empire today are going to make it easier for you to make that right investment. And part of that, my favorite thing to talk about with Empire, is the virtual floor visualizer. I think the first time that I used this example was with the last time when the 3 of you were on here. Imagine if you could see what it was like to see an outing from Eduardo Rodriguez, if you could tell that he was going to shove like he did last night before you put him out there. Right?
I'd make far too much money on that.
You would make way too much money. It's almost too easy, right?
World.
Well, Empire today has that for floors with you. They're the virtual floor visualizer. You can see exactly what they're going to look like in your home, in your office, whatever you're trying to renovate and make just a little bit nicer. You're going to make sure that you have the right floors in there for you. And you can schedule a free in-home estimate today and get some money off. All listeners receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Some restrictions do apply. See empiretoday.com/PHNX for details. Let's stick on the starting pitching, because they have the talent. They have the investment money-wise, but do they have the PHNX Diamondbacks crew confidence? On a scale of 1 to 10, Jesse, how confident are you if the Diamondbacks make the postseason that their starting pitching is going to be enough for them to at least make a medium run? We won't say a deep run, but a medium run.
So a medium run.
A run-ish.
Run-ish. So you win the wild card and have a good showing in the next round.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would maybe say a 6 at this point. I think Zac Gallen and Merrill Kelly have looked better lately, which has been really one of the biggest developments for this team over the last couple of weeks. Gallen has, I think, a 1.69 ERA in his last 3 starts, even though still has not been quite as efficient as you'd probably like to see. And Merrill Kelly has looked really good lately as well. The D-backs lost that Monday game in brutal fashion to the Rockies, but he threw 6 innings of 1-run ball in that game, obviously at Coors Field as well. So you're starting to see better signs from those guys. Erod, as we mentioned earlier, has, that was a really, really encouraging outing for him in the finale. And then beyond that, there are still some questions, right? Do you get Ryan Nelson back from the injured list before the end of the season in time to maybe pitch in the playoffs? Is Brandon Pfaadt able to kind of round into form? He has really, really struggled here over the last month or two for the D-backs at this point. So 1, 2, 3, I think as of this moment, you can kind of talk yourself into that group being okay in the playoffs. But as was the case last year, the number 4 starter is a little bit of a question mark. Of course, that's familiar territory.
Higher or lower than 6, Derek?
Oh, higher.
Much. You had a smile
Much
on your
higher.
face.
Much higher. I believe in this team more than Jesse Friedman does, that's for sure. But what I believe in is pitching, and Jesse makes a great point. Last year, the Diamondbacks made that playoff run they made with 3 guys. That's it. 3 guys. Big game Brandon stepped up. Brandon Pfaadt was a different pitcher in the postseason than he ever was throughout the regular season last year. And I have a foolish confidence that we will see that again. I think the Diamondbacks are much deeper. I think Eduardo Rodriguez shoved yesterday, and I love that. And again, yes, it's against Colorado Rockies, so I don't want to get too excited about it, but it's just a very encouraging step in the right direction for someone who we do believe can be the number 3 starting pitcher for this team. So then you have Ryan Nelson potentially returning from injury. That's going to add depth. Torey can do things
that would be huge. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Torey can not only use him as a starter, but Torey could also plug him in after Brandon Pfaadt just goes through the lineup 2 times. And maybe he does what he did last year and kind of protects him in that way. You also have Jordan Montgomery, who can also be an asset for this team out of the bullpen. We know he loves being out there. He just goes and hangs out in the bullpen now. So, I mean, that man is he's dying for the postseason to come around. So he can just spend all of his time with his buddies out there. And maybe he can be a huge asset to this team. I just feel like things aren't great right now. But, that's only because this team is getting a lot of missing parts back. And it's hard in baseball for you to get back and get kind of into that groove. They have this 10-game span for them to do that. And I feel, again, foolishly confident that I think the starting pitching staff is going to take it to another level should they be able to reach the postseason.
So put a number on it.
9.
That's outrageous.
Wow.
It's outrageous, but
that's insanity.
It's because I think ultimately it's going to allow for Torey Lovullo to have a lot of different options versus what he has now, trying to manage a 5-man starting rotation. And again, with the losses that they've had recently, both in the bullpen, Paul Sewald is on the injured list. You lost Ryan Nelson for the time being. So this stretch is difficult. But I think with those guys back and considering the playoff format, it's going to be a completely different animal once the playoffs are.
Turn the 6 upside down. It's a 9 now. That's your method.
Yeah.
Damon, are you Goldilocks? Are you somewhere in between right?
I was going to go with 7.5.
Look at that.
I believe in Merrill Kelly and Zac Gallen.
Gotcha.
I really do. I think Brandon Pfaadt has the ability to step up. He's been there before. Eduardo Rodriguez is peaking kind of at the right time. Ryan Nelson, like Jesse mentioned, I mean, he was the best pitcher on this team over the last so many weeks. So if they can get him back, that would be huge. I'm not worried about the starting pitching, which I would imagine leads you into the next conversation.
Well, yeah, we could talk confidence with the bullpen as well. We'll go quick with that because the big number I'm wondering for you guys is just confidence level in this team overall, not just pitching. But let's go bullpen, rapid fire. Jesse, put a number on it.
AJ Puck is a 10. The rest of the group, 3. It's sort of been AJ Puck and then everyone else for a while. The whole group for me is probably a 5 at this point, I would say.
I would be a little bit higher than that, probably a 6, not much higher. But again, I agree with Jesse about AJ Puck being incredible. Everybody else just being inconsistent. I think Justin Martinez is an amazing talent, but I don't know how he's going to perform with the brightest of lights on him. And we've seen him at times kind of struggle when that pressure is on. So if J-Mart can perform in front of the postseason audience the way he performed in front of his parents then for the first time they got to see him pitch
Bring
live.
his parents out every game.
Bring his parents out.
Problem solved.
Get that out of him. Then I'm fairly but again, it's not enough guys. Like Jesse said, you have even those two that I feel confident in, and then everybody else I think has given you reason to be concerned about their performance.
Are you splitting the difference again? 5.5, Damon?
No, I was actually thinking 5 before Jesse said it, and I think with Kevin Ginkel and Ryan Thompson, those are the two people that I think kind of make or break this bullpen going into the postseason.
Yeah.
Because they have the ability to kind of just shut teams down. But we haven't really seen that in recent times. So it's going to really come down to them. I believe in AJ Puck, as Jesse mentioned. And I think Justin Martinez, this is my take on that. I think he's going to get an opportunity in like an extra innings baseball game with the California rule, runner starting on second base, where it's going to be a massive moment for Justin Martinez. If he can get a strikeout, get a ground ball, get out of that inning, he could win the Diamondbacks a playoff game by himself in that kind of moment, or he could kind of let up coming into a situation with runners on already. So I really think there's about 4 or 5 guys you're looking at in that bullpen, but I'm going with like very medium 5 level confidence.
Okay. Last question for the wonderful PHNX Diamondbacks crew, which you can catch 5 days a week, either doing a post game or a show at 1 o'clock right here on PHNX Sports. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe as well. And of course, you're in audio as well, so make sure you rate them 5 stars. Confidence level, the Diamondbacks just make the playoffs. Just get there, right? Get in the wild card round, because it was so doom and gloom for a while. Then they win against the Rockies. You're 2 games ahead of the Braves. You're tied with the Mets. You're 2.5 behind the Padres for the first spot in the wild card. We'll go backwards. Damon, confidence level, the Diamondbacks are there when the wild card round starts.
8.
There we go.
I feel pretty good about it. But also, I'm very fickle. If the Diamondbacks lost yesterday, I'd be like 2. So
Yeah, if they got swept by the Rockies, the vibes are much
I
different.
think that's a reasonable response, though. It's funny because maybe when we are in May and people are reacting that way, that's ridiculous. But right now down this stretch, I don't think it's ridiculous to feel that way about how important each win and each loss is. I think they go 5-5 down the stretch, and it's enough to get them in. And I think my confidence level is right there with Damon at 8.
At 8? Jesse, are you bucking the trend? Higher, lower, 8?
Well, I'm a person of the numbers, Eric. And according to FanGraphs, the Diamondbacks playoff odds are currently about 77%.
Okay, I asked Jesse, not FanGraphs.
Yeah, but we're one and the same, Eric. That's what you're not understanding. We're the same. So I'm gonna say 7.7 in accordance with what the playoff
that
odds
is kind of
say.
gross.
So.
I love you, Jesse, but that is kind of gross. It's very on brand, but gross.
I feel pretty good about my 8 out of 10 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
this
8
is
out
the
of 10.
definition of
Without
eye test.
looking at FanGraphs, yeah, you nailed it.
Eye test versus numbers, not that different.
Maybe I'm the one that's connected to FanGraphs when you think about it.
You know what?
I don't even need to look.
Yeah, Jesse has to check it. Maybe Damon's just a
I
computer.
just felt it.
FanGraphs is speaking to
you're
me.
rounding it off to the nearest whole number, which feels
what is it?
a little
7.764298.3.
I was gonna say 7.75, but I decided to cut
Well,
off
if you
the
round that
last
up, it's
numbers.
7.8 numbers, man.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, if you want more of the numbers, if you want more of the joy, if the Diamondbacks do make the playoffs and are able to make a run like they did last year, and if you want everything in between, you can find that with the wonderful PHNX Diamondbacks crew 5 days a week. Like I mentioned, it's Derek, it's Jesse, it's Damon, it's Archie Bradley as well. All of that you can find right here in your podcast feed. If you're listening on audio, of course, you can find it on the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Just type in PHNX Sports and you can find that as well, along with all the other wonderful things that we do, from Suns to Cardinals to Mercury to Rising to, Sun Devils and Wildcats. I'm on the Sun Devils show 5 days a week at 1:30 or post games as well. They take on Texas Tech this weekend. Plus, you can catch Southwest Bias twice a week right here on PHNX Sports as well. So make sure that you follow Derek at Cap_Caveman. That's Cap with a K, right?
For strikeouts.
For strikeouts. You can follow Jesse Friedman at Jesse N. Friedman. You can follow Damon at Damon Dog, DAWG. We are all Damon's dogs. Ruff, ruff. Bark. You can follow me at Erik Ruby. That's Erik with a K, ERIKRUBY. And we will catch you guys next week for another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.